Welcome back. It's time to talk about annual maintenance. I've waited 2 years to change my fuel lines, and today's task will require 4 feet of 7mm ID and 2 feet of fuel return line. 6mm is ideal. I wasn't able to find that, so I'm using 5mm. It will be an ultra tight fit, and at the fuel tank return with the straight pipe, doesn't have a bulb, doesn't have a barb, doesn't have a flare. I do use a fuel resistant gas maker on it, and I double clamp that just to be sure. Easy task, 75 bucks and probably an hour of your time. Since we're working on the fuel system, before we start, we want to disconnect the battery. I have put a master shutoff here, so we will disengage that now. So let's get to it. Fuel lines are critical components, and one thing you can do to test them is feel how resistant they are to squeezing. If there's any drying or cracking, need to be replaced. I like these original braided hoses, but they are butyllized rubber, and your expectation is that they last 1 year, maybe 2 if you're lucky, like I've gotten here, but no more. These remove the wheel and the inner fender liner. Once the car is safely jacked up, the wheel off, and the wheel well removed, you need to find out where the top hose ends at the tank, actually down below the tank, and then this will be our clamping spot right at this hose. Boy, that's getting dried out. You can feel how stiff that is. We'll put our vice grips on the outflow to stop all the fuel. We'll have our catch pan there, and we will expect a bunch of fuel to come out, at least everything that's in the hoses, in the lines that is, and probably some from the filter and pump flowing over. It usually isn't that much, a cup at the most. But let's start removing the hose from the carburetor up above and letting that spill over into our catch can. Going up to the top, we're about to remove our hose, and I notice a little bit of scuff here, right here, and my zip tie is very, very loose there. So I can see that is something we want to correct and tighten this closer and flow it along. Maybe another zip tie there, but you can see this is starting to wear on it a little bit. We're going to prevent that. Release the clamp with a screwdriver and then pull the old hose off the nipple and keep it vertical so no leftover fuel will flow out. Now that we have 2 clamps on the outflow, we're guaranteed that a bulk of it is going to be stopped, but we probably can't guarantee everything. So we may have to work fast. Don't know if I can get video of it all, but now that our flow is stopped from the tank, let's go up top and start removing hose from the carburetors and work backwards. As you remove the old hose, replace it with the new hose and connect it in the same location. Tighten the new hose onto the outflow of the fuel pump and make sure it's tight. This is butyl rubber. It will relax after a week or so, or a couple heat cycles, so you'll want to come back in the future in a week or 2, maybe 3, and check for tightness again. It can relax and get loose on you just a little bit. Next, we'll be working backwards, and you can see I've got a double clamp on the fuel filter to the fuel pump hose. So we will be replacing that, and I will be retaining both fuel clamps. So we replace the intermediate filter to pump line, and we have one last, and that's from the tank to the filter. All right, take the old one off, put the new one on, have it cut to length, assemble the clamps, and then the last portion will be to pull the old hose off the live fuel tank and get it out. You'll notice I'm using LED battery powered lights. This is a safe choice, not AC powered incandescents that can break and spark. We're working around fuel here. So let's get the clamps prepped to that last portion of hose ready to put on the fuel as it flows out. We don't have much catch at all today. This is amazing. I haven't been. Okay. We're swapping the line end Did get a number of dribbles, not that much. And make sure the clamp is on top. And tighten that down off. Once the last line is installed, check all clamps for a second time to be tightened, and then reinstall the wheel well and the wheel. Let's move over to the passenger side and change out the return fuel line. Remove the passenger side rear wheel and inner fender liner. All right, now that we have the wheel and the inner fender off, we can look at the path of the return fuel line here. This is a standard nipple which will take your 7mm hose, but as you can see, this return is attached to the clip here and then drops down to this pipe. I've double clamped it, and I've also used Permatex Gray fuel resistant sealant before. So I'll start removing that. I see I could use a little bit more distance in this. I'm going to add a couple more inches, but this pipe will be your limitation on size of hose. There's no barb, no flare, no bulb, and you want to make sure this fuel return line is nice and tight and sealed. The fuel line should flow to the undercut of the holder of the tab right there in a relaxed manner and an easy curve. Bring the fuel hose and follow the old one where it sits underneath the roll tab. Then feed it back through the stay, and then our last position, we will cut to fit this to our outflow of the carburetor. If you have overlength like this, you want to make sure not to have any tight curves in it. And since we have so much, let's make sure this sits very easily and lays through. But as you pull it through, do not let it knot up or cause a crimp in the hose. Now, before you cut the new hose to its final fit and remove the old one, check your final lengths, check for twisting, check for routing. I have moved the fuel line closer up here away from the electrics, and I'm now routing it on top of the coolant return line, the breather line there. I'm going to see how that works, and I'm also going to check that with the owner's manual too. Seems like a better run. Just to double check things, because I see mod, I pulled out my owner's manual from the OEM, turned to page 26, and I see the diagram here does show the return fuel line coming out of the carburetors over the coolant, I'll call it a breather line, and then returning back to the passenger side fuel tank. So not only was it intrinsically obvious to me and the right way to do it, it's in the owner's manual. Make the final measurement and cut. Make sure all the twists are out of the line. You can see the old fuel line had Permatex Gray on it, and we will repeat that too, just because we want to be ultra safe. Insert the new hose into its final position and tighten the clamp. Tighten it down until it is hand tight. We're going to let the Permatex adhere also to that overnight, and then come back tomorrow and see if we can give it another twist. Our new lines are in. We're going to wait a day for the Permatex to cure, and then we will power up for about 10 minutes and let the fuel pumps run and check for any leaks. The next day, I've been running the pumps for over 10 minutes now, and there is nothing on the ground. Well, we took the Dino for a ride, and there's absolutely no leaks to the fuel system. I am going to accelerate future changes to 1 year. As you can see, it's only 4 feet of 7mm line and 2 feet of 6mm or 5mm if you can find it. Thanks much for coming along. Here's your annual maintenance for the Dino on the fuel system.